We should be good to go here. Okay. Welcome to the weekly baseball rundown. I am here with, to my immediate left, Kurt.
Hey, good evening.
I am here with Jesse. And I'm here with Mr. Salisbury Steak himself, Josh.
Good evening, sir.
We've had a wonderful week of baseball. They've been some good things, some bad things, and I'll lead us off with the number one topic: arm injuries in baseball. Most people blame the pitch clock, others blame poor conditioning. Is it because pitchers are not taking better care of themselves, or is it because of the timing of it all? Pitchers aren't going that full five anymore, and when they are, they're getting injured. Is it because of the pitching staff, or is it because the trainers are not being trained well enough? Jackson Jobe just went and had Tommy John surgery. He is done for the year. Tigers have been fantastic with their pitching rotation. But my question to you three is, and I'll start with Kurt, is baseball losing more and more arms to Tommy John due to their rule changes or due to poor conditioning? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Go ahead, Kurt.
I suspect the conditioning is not as big an issue as one thinks. You look at some of the pitchers who were around for a long time in the 60s and the 70s, Mickey Lolich being the obvious example, but there are a few others. There were some guys out there who were not the least bit conditioned. One of the most famous pitching coaches back in the day was Johnny Sain, and he completely disdained running for his pitchers. He said, running never got you anywhere. So one of my feelings is, unfortunately, the best way to get batters out is throw the ball as hard as you possibly can. And throwing a baseball as hard as you possibly can is an unnatural motion for the arm. You do that a couple hundred times a week, sooner or later, something's going to start hurting. And my only recommendation is, I know the Orioles tended to do this in the 70s and the 80s, and maybe some other teams are going to do it as well. Maybe instead of having guys come up and be starters right away, maybe they go in the bullpen instead of throwing 150, 200 innings a year and then getting TJ surgery. They start out throwing 50 or 60 innings a year and work their way up. Because, these are still young guys in their early and mid 20s. We'll see. I don't know. There's no one right answer as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I enjoy this philosophy here. Johnny Sain and Warren Spahn were two of the greatest for the Braves staff for the longest time. And I think conditioning isn't the problem either. I think it's just that you're right in this situation, throwing the ball as hard as you can. But it's the thing I learned, and because I ended up having to shadow a couple trainers when I was in college, but it's repetitive motion. It's constant repetitive motion that causes the muscle to start tearing up and everything else. And next thing you know, it's not the rubber band anymore. Because I was talking to these guys about it before. The arm is no longer elastic. The elasticity of the muscles is slowly going away. But I do agree with what you have to say. Jesse, you're up, and David, I'll have you take over for a moment. Sorry about that. Mom needed me to do something real quick. But as we were talking about, and I know, and I caught a little bit what you guys said, and I'll get to Jesse in a moment, but another thing is the knuckleball pitcher is pretty much disappeared off the plane. And the last one I remember is the Orioles guy. I think it was Mickey Janis. He was the last knuckleballer that I know of who's been consistent. But all these pitchers in college now are starting to master the knuckleball, and I think that should be brought back a little bit. Jesse, I'd like to hear what you have to say, please.
I don't know if it's the pitching clock, but I think the pitching clock is just an inconvenience to the pitchers because it makes them have to throw at a more it makes them uncomfortable, in my opinion. It makes things uncomfortable because you're being timed to do something that you're not normally used to, and then you have analytics that says you have to do certain things, and nowadays pitchers are throwing throwing fastballs at high amounts every game, and that there's no use of like pitches like the curveball, the knuckleball. You don't have you don't see that much anymore. It's like always about the spin rate. It's always about throwing and the pitch speed. I mean, that's just my take on it. I don't think it's conditioning. I think it's the it's a constant throwing, and your arm just over time, the the joint there just
Yeah, the
goes.
UCL, and because more often than not, it's the constant overusage of the UCL. Because there is a guy who went on to become a doctor. His name was Mike Marshall, and I know some of you guys know who he is, some of you don't. But back in 1974, well over 50 years ago now, 51 years, Mike Marshall appeared in 108 games. No one's done it now, no one's done it since. But he said he ended up pitching so often that he didn't, and he studies it now and everything, and he's tried to teach people to do a different motion. But I always wonder if it's a combination of the stress on the joint and everything else, which causes more problems. But pitchers back in the 70s didn't throw as hard. And my biggest example is I don't know how to say his last name, and I'm afraid of screwing it up, but it's the guy from the Pirates. He pitched for them in two different World Series, I believe, in 71 and 79. His name is Kent
To Colby.
Tulikel, I think?
To Colby.
Colby. But he had one of the strangest, him and Quisenberry both had two of the strangest deliveries I've ever seen. But I wonder if it's the delivery, because if I think of somebody like that, I think of the modern example of Tim Lincecum and his motion, which caused him to only have like a 10-year career, where his mechanics and everything else, and that's what I think of. Josh, it'd be your turn right now. I'm sorry, I know I'm getting a little off course here.
No, you're fine. I'm going to go on the other side of this argument and hit on the conditioning a little bit because of what I've seen with my own hometown team. We had two pitchers that had what they're calling major injuries. I'll bring up the easiest one that hits for conditioning for me. Shota Imanaga right now is down at Iowa. He's just now he finally threw a full game today. And the reason he was on the IL was a hamstring because he was getting over to first base to cover it. Now, to me, that's a short distance, and you should be able to make that without pulling a hamstring muscle. But this is where I think the trainers do need to spend a little time with these pitchers, conditioning their almost the entire body, the arms, the legs. And then you had Justin Steele. Why did I blank on that? He had Tommy John surgery, and he's obviously out for the year, and who knows what he's going to be like when he gets back, because he's going to lose a lot. I think he's going to lose a lot of that, because they always seem to, after they've had the surgery, they lose some of that edge. But the trainers, I think, and I've known a couple MLB trainers, they need to spend time with their pitchers and get them on a decent regimen to avoid these minor injuries like the hamstrings and the obliques, and it's those things, and the pitch clock honestly doesn't help either. Does it speed the game up? Yes, but it's frustrating for a pitcher to get a pitch clock violation if you're not engaged by 8 seconds.
I like that. I like both sides of this argument here. The longevity thing. You guys probably don't know where I'm going to go with this, but I'm going to go right and hit this on the head now. Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan was one of the hardest throwing pitchers out there. He struck out over 5,700 people. No one's touched 5,000 strikeouts, and I don't think they ever will again. But they showed him as he got older, when he got up to age 46 and when his arm finally gave out in the last start of 93. But what he did was he was constantly in the gym. He wasn't overworking. He wasn't hitting like 500 pounds on the bench press, but he was doing little things like just little small things to keep his body healthy. Like he was doing leg press. He was doing the seated leg press and stuff like that. He was doing motions where he was using lighter weights. He wasn't using like a dumbbell or anything, but he was using weighted balls like they do now, where I think that conditions the arm. But this leads to something else that I feel is going to cause a little bit of problems. Is it too much of an emotional toll on the game now based off what the umpires are doing to these pitchers? Because I've talked to Josh about this and I talked to David about this because they both had issues with umpires recently. Umpires affect the game more often than we think, and this is where I get into this. The ABS system is supposed to come into baseball soon. I want to know how you guys think about it. Is it going to take away from the game? Is it going to hurt the game, or is it going to make it better? All they're basically doing now is a batter is allowed to tap their helmet now and test the strike zone. Say if it's a ball or a strike, where it's located. But Kurt, I'll let you go ahead and go first on this. Is it going to change the game for better or worse?
I think I'm in favor of this. I haven't seen the technology, but I'm sure all of you, like me, have seen some of the YouTube videos where we're seeing umpires who are calling pitches way outside the strike zone as strikes, or they're calling pitches that are inside the strike zone as balls. It's very frustrating to the batters, and in some cases to the pitchers as well. The announcers tend to keep their mouths shut unless it's blatantly obvious. I also think one of the things that might help is that if the umpire is taken out of the equation, a batter can't call time and say, "Hey," in the middle of a pitcher's windup and say, "Hey, I need time." So that's going to be an automatic strike. Or a pitcher tries to hold up their motion, and as you noted, that's where they get hurt. So let's give it a shot, see what happens. It seems to be working in the minor leagues, at least to the point where nobody's complaining about it, or I haven't heard huge complaints about it. In spring training next year, I'm sure you will hear complaints about it, but let's give it a shot, see what happens. It took the NFL a few years to get instant replay right, but they did eventually. Major League Baseball can do it too.
The one that pissed me off the most is not involving Angel Hernandez, but it was the Kansas City Royals' Josh Staumont in Kansas City. 100-mile-an-hour fastball, ball one. Right down the middle. No way, no how should a pitch that far down the middle should be called a ball anyway. I don't care what the umpires saw or what they didn't saw. You are the catcher. You catch the ball in the middle of the strike zone, and you look back at Leslie Nielsen back there, and he claims he didn't see it. I'd be pissed. Jesse, your turn.
Yeah, like it's insane how these umpires are getting away with calling like obvious balls. Like the last game I saw, the clip David showed me was when the game was on the line and the guy obviously threw a ball down and away from the strike zone, and the game was pretty much over. The umpire called strike three, and that was it. And I was like, that was clearly not a strike. That was a ball. You know, I even saw it in Houston too. I think it was last season when clearly those were not strikes. The umpire, I think this system would better the game of baseball because missed calls like that ruin games.
They do. They really do. And the one that you're associating with was Wyatt Langford. Angel Hernandez was the umpire for that one. All the pitches were at least 6 inches, if not more, off the outside edge. I'm sorry, but the only reason a pitch should ever be called a ball is if it misses the strike zone, it's in the dirt, or this third thing is if it's everyone should know what a cross-up is. It's when a pitcher calls for throws a pitch that the catcher didn't catch in the right zone, and it's considered a ball. But the strike zone has changed, and I'm not going to give that to the umpires. Like, there's plenty of umpires that have been doing this far too long. They're far too sensitive now and have not taken control of their emotions, like Derek Thomas in Detroit the other day. And this is where I lead him in. Josh, let him have it. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm in agreement with everybody, I think, where I say let's give ABS a try because of after what I saw in Detroit and one day in where were we? Philly this week. And the umpire, Derek Thomas, was a rookie umpire. I had to do a little research on this. Was a rookie umpire, and he was just his strike zone and ball zone was all over the place. It wasn't consistent. And finally, Nico Horner, not ticked off at him or anything, just turned around to him and said, "You're having a really bad day, aren't you?" And got tossed. Then the manager comes out and gets tossed in defense of his player. And go Craig Counsell, thank you very much. But what he said to that umpire was not ejectable. He like Joey and I were talking earlier, the guy just got his feelings hurt. And he's a rookie umpire. A rookie umpire has no place behind the strike zone right away. They've got to get a couple of years under their belt first, I think. Now, in regards to ABS taking away some parts of the game, the human part of the game, I do agree with that a little bit. But with these umpires being the way they are lately, let's give ABS a try and see if that works.
There's no such thing as I will put this bluntly. There's no such thing as the perfect umpire. There's no such thing as a perfect game. Most recently with Umpire Auditor, which I follow on X, they show who misses the call and why. I get there's human error in this sport. I know there's going to be missed calls, but it should never affect the outcome of a ball game because an umpire is too stubborn to change their call, go to replay, or get it right. Joe Torre is still the head of the umpires, and he's getting up there in age, but he was a catcher, and that's why I give him credit. Catchers know more about being behind home plate than anybody else. They should know what they're talking about. And for the last one here, I'm going down on the farm, and no, you can't call me Cletus. But what we're going to do now is Houston's got a farm team, the Mets have their farm team, and the Cubs have their farm team, which is funnily enough in Iowa, which is where it looks like we are right now. But does your farm team affect you the most right now if you're in your GM's shoes? Because each team is different, and if you've traded away a lot of prospects, are you going to be able to heal enough with this draft coming up this month, I believe? Are you going to have enough players to go around? Kurt, for the farm, how are the Mets looking right now?
Right now, the Mets are looking pretty decent on the farm. The AAA team's not doing great. They're 29 and 35 as I speak. But here's the thing: the AAA teams at this point, for a lot of teams, they're basically the guys who are sitting there waiting to make the majors. They're not not all filled with guys who are going to be first round prospects. A lot of them, their top prospects now play at AA. So I'm not super concerned about it right now. The Mets are in a big hot streak. So what they're probably looking for me at this point is maybe another guy or two who might help them out, especially at the dish, because they could use a few more hits. Pitching wise, man, they're going to get Sean Manaea back in a week or two. They're going to get Frankie Montas back in a couple weeks. They don't know what to do with Tyler McGill and David Peterson, who have been filling in the starting rotation. Peterson pitched a complete game shutout this evening. So all of a sudden it's like, what do I do with this guy? So I'm not worried about it for arms. I think the farm system right now, they're doing okay. The Mets have done a lot better over the last couple of years of building up a farm system. One of the things you want with a AAA team is make sure they are close by, that they're maybe a couple hundred miles away at the most. so that if something happens, you can rush a guy in the next day and have him as a replacement. For a couple of years in the late 2010s, the Mets AAA farm team was in Las Vegas, almost 3,000 miles away. That was not a good situation. The Wilpons messed that up big time. They own the Syracuse franchise now, so that's not going to happen again. But I'm pretty confident that that system has been a top 15 to 20 10 to 15 system over the last couple of years. I think they're set up for a good run in the fall without necessarily needing somebody superstar out of the minor leagues.
And that's why I love to hear, and Kurt is 100% right on this, because I remember now that they have the Syracuse team in Syracuse, I remember they had Norfolk and then they had Las Vegas. You can't have a team that's too far away, because if you're in a game where you're, say, where the team, your AAA team is in Las Vegas, and you're on the other side of the border, I'm using this as a thing, not reality, but if you're in Toronto and you're trying to play an interleague game, a doubleheader, you got to get these guys to drive all the way up there, catch a quick flight. They won't be there. But I know, because I'll go to Jesse next, because they got Sugarland over there, and I know Sugarland isn't too far from Houston, if I know my geography right.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Sugarland's not
Jesse.
that far. Well, the Astros farm system is ranked 29 right now, but we've been the bottom. We've been the bottom with Los Angeles, which is not good. I mean, granted, we've been to the playoffs 9 times and won 7 American League division titles and reached 7 AL Championship Series, won 4 AL pennants and 2 World Series crowns, but we've never really we're always trading for prospects. We've never I think the only prospect I've seen so far from the Astros farm system was Pena. I think the Astros could do a better job at bringing in more homegrown talents instead of having to trade for like DeCenzo or Smith, which was from I don't know where DeCenzo came from, but I know Cam Smith came from Chicago due to that Kyle Tucker trade. But I mean, we could do better. It's not the best, but
I know for a fact that it's been a decade now, a little more than a decade, since Houston's had that point where they've had to rebuild their farm system. And that's always hard for teams like that, especially when they've been competitive. Sometimes you have to rebuild, redevelop, retool. But for the most part, it's not as easy unless you get rid of these big names and everything else, like Kyle Tucker. So I'm going to go to Josh. I know it's Iowa for the Cubs. The Iowa Cubs, they've been there forever, and you pretty much can't get rid of that name because Iowa is not too far from Chicago, so they could basically jump on the back of a hay truck and go up there themselves.
Well,
Go ahead, Josh.
yeah, and that works fine when we're playing at Wrigley. But if we're across the country in California or one of the West Coast states, we have a hard time getting players there. We had to actually send a player to Chicago and then throw him on a plane to get to the West Coast because he had stuff at Wrigley they wanted to give him before he went to the West Coast, and it just delayed things. Right, we're not in the top 10 for farm systems right now, but we're okay. The thing I see them having a problem with is catchers and pitchers right now. Catchers, especially because we have Miguel Amaya is also out on the IL with an oblique strain, so we have Carson Kelly filling in a lot of games. The one good thing is in the farm system we do have Moises Ballesteros who can play first base and catching. Now he prefers first base and hasn't caught a game except the one we have him catch one game, and he did okay with it. But I think we need to get more pitchers and catchers because if you lose a catcher, that could cost you a game. That could cost you a series. It could cost you a game. And we're not good with that yet.
No. And my number one pet peeve now is this with the 26-man roster. And this was not a pet peeve before, but it is now. You used to have a third string catcher. And I know this ain't, and I know I'm not 30 yet. I shouldn't know a lot of this stuff I know. But the third string catcher did this on his days off. He went and sat in the bullpen. They have a bullpen catcher now, so they don't have to do this anymore. But the third string catcher used to go warm up the pitcher in the bullpen. The starting catcher would be the one who'd be helping him out. But the backup catcher is always there ready. Because you have to have a bullpen catcher now, and then the third string's down in the bullpen. So that way, if your first string catcher gets hurt, like what happened with the A's with Langoliers, now they've got McIver, and now they got Pareda. You have to carry at least 3 catchers. I know that seems taboo now, but you got with the 26-man roster, you can have up to 3 extra players or 4 extra players on your bench, but you got to have 5 starters and 6 relievers at least. That's why with the double headers and everything else, they give you that 27th player. But you always have to think, do I need the bench guy or do I need the pitcher? Because you never know when a guy's going to blow out his arm or you're going to need a guy. But I think the third catcher is always and forever going to be my soapbox that I'm going to stand on, because catcher is one of the most demanding positions in baseball. And I'll leave on that. Thank you guys again for enjoying this weekly baseball rundown. I know a lot of the stuff I'm saying right now may seem foreign to a lot of people, but this was baseball a long time ago, and it's continuously evolving. But for Kurt, Jesse, Josh, and myself, we will run down some baseball again soon. Unfortunately, just not next week. I will not be here. But thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful time. And remember, baseball is a game, and games are supposed to be fun. You guys have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining us here. Bye-bye.